Hi, everybody. My name is Christopher. I'm part of the Professional Amateurs of the 707, here with a new web series we're trying to produce. It's called What About? And essentially, what it is going to be about a 10 to 15-minute video that's just totally free form discussion about one topic that we choose for the week. The only criteria that we went into it was that we wanted to make sure that we didn't do any edits or supercuts or anything like that. The thinking behind it is that when you start seeing people link ideas with life experiences and anecdotes, it's really magical and there's something neat to be able to follow their train of thought. When you start editing, it becomes kind of inorganic, very choppy, and we just want to retain everything in just one giant block. So, with that being said, the very first topic that I want to talk about was churches. Not the band or the fast food chain, but the actual institution that you go to worship. I've always kind of had a hit or miss kind of a relationship with it, so I thought that'd be kind of a great place to start. And to start, I suppose, just childhood. My immediate family wasn't super religious. We didn't go to Sunday school, we didn't really go to church. It was kind of a, if you wanted to go, great. If not, whatever. So it wasn't up until a point where we started going down to see family a little bit more. In particular, an uncle on my dad's side who was a very devout Christian who would always go to church every Sunday. And when we went with him, we would go to church first and then kind of like a lunch or the park afterwards. It wasn't until that point when I was about 6 or 7 that we started going. And in that church in particular, they would divvy up and divide kind of like the age groups into different classrooms and had kind of a tailor made lesson plan for them. So that was kind of like my first foray into it. And I just remember being a little bit apprehensive, I guess, because I did feel like an interloper going into their classroom. Because at that point, I had never read the Bible, I had never picked one up, I had never been to church at that point. So it was always cool because the kids would play, we'd play Monopoly, we'd do a little bit of everything. And in between, there was like lessons about the Bible and whatnot. So for the first 2 weeks, I was feeling pretty cool. It wasn't up until like probably the third, fourth visit where the teacher pulled out a hacky sack. And I kept thinking, oh boy, this is my chance to earn Jesus points or whatever it was at the time with using my kid logic. And it was totally something that I wasn't expecting. Essentially, what the teacher was doing was tossing it around the classroom. And when you received the hacky sack, you would recite a Bible verse, your favorite Bible verse, rather. And I just kept remembering my heart just being like, oh no, I'm going to be found out. I'm going to be found out that I don't know anything about Jesus or Christianity or anything like that. And of course, in very typical fashion, I'm like the second or third person to get it. And I just remember just like freezing and being like, oh no, this is it. I'm going to be kicked out. But it was super, super nice. I mean, the kids beside me were just like, oh, what about Luke 13:4 or whatever it was? I was like, I just don't know. And I just tossed it and just sank into my desk, just feeling like completely defeated. Um, and that was like my first like real solid memory about church. So, eventually we kept going for about like 4 months up into the point where we moved officially into the northern portion of California. And for a very long time, about 14, 15 years, I didn't go back to a single church. It wasn't until recently, with a ex girlfriend of mine, that she kind of brought me back into church. She started out with a kind of a Bible group. I guess is what it's called. Just like a group of like 6 or 7 people, and they would have like a tailor-made lesson for it, and that was really cool. I liked the hands-off approach to it, and it wasn't up until recently that I decided to kind of go on my own volition to a church and really kind of figure out why it hasn't always boded well for me. So I think it was beginning of February. I had just went to a random church here in the North Bay, and I just remember showing up at seven in the morning because I had no clue when church started, and I was just walking around because this church is like a labyrinth. Like I got lost, and it was about like 10, 15 minutes later that an elderly gentleman comes around and says, can I help you with something? And I was like, yeah. I haven't really gone to church all that regularly, and I just wanted to see what this place was about. So we got to talking for about like 10 or 15 minutes, and he's like, "Well, church doesn't start till 8:45. If you want to just hang out with the band and just kind of just stick around, and we'd be glad to answer any questions that you had." So I thought that was kind of cool. It was very. I like when things aren't pushy. I guess just kind of hands off, let you kind of explore your own heart or your inner workings of your mind. So I spent the whole entire time there. It was really grandiose and really warm and heartfelt. Like everybody that would come in would give hugs and handshakes. And even though I kind of sat in the back of the church, I was still getting like handshakes. Like, oh, is this your first time? And it's like, if you have any questions, just let us know. And just kind of have that recurring theme of just like I guess brotherly love, that kind of like camaraderie, and it felt nice. It really did. And of course, they had the band, and everyone stood up and was singing these songs, and everyone was lifting their arms and just really getting into it. And the whole entire time, I was just kind of, I don't know. I've always had this like disconnect with church. Like, I don't know if it's because I didn't start right away, or it wasn't instilled into my life that I've always had this like dissidence with it. Uh, but I stuck with it. I went for the very first time throughout the whole entire thing, and right before I left, elderly gentleman that I actually had met up with at the very beginning was actually the owner of the actual church, which was like, oh, well, nice to meet you, you know. And he said that he was thinking about my whole entire visit, and he had given me a little slip of paper with a saying on it, and I think I have it right here. Yeah, it's just a little card that he has written, and it's the verse Isaiah 58:9. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and He will say, "Here I am." And that was kind of a neat thing that, you know, that was kind of done. It was that, I mean, I was just one face of like 200, and the fact that he took the time out of his day to kind of walk me through it was just really amiable and just really nice. So I went to that same church about 5 weeks in a row, and I stopped going for the last 2 weeks because I've been really busy with work and with just this whole entire YouTube thing. But I do like the atmosphere. I do like the idea of love and the idea of looking out for your neighbor and whatnot. But I'm not sure why. I just can't put myself in it. Like, I'm not sure if it's in my heart or if it's in my mind that I'm not fully invested. And I try really hard to just kind of throw it out there, because the uncle that I had mentioned in the very beginning of the story, he's actually in Ecuador right now, preaching the Lord's word to these people. And that's just phenomenal. Like, to have that feeling that you need to go to a whole entire different country and to preach this. Like, I keep seeing examples of people doing this, and for me, I just don't know. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because that horrible incident with the hacky sack, or if it's just something fundamentally weird about me. So I'm not sure if any of you, the viewers, have had this kind of similar experience, or if you've always had church in your life. Just let me know in the comments below if you've ever had this kind of this feeling, or if it's just something that, since you've gone all your life, it's something that you've only known, or if it's maybe just the churches I've been going to that haven't been 100%. But that's just kind of like my 2 cents about it. And we always read and write back to every single comment that we see, so feel free to do that. And if you have any suggestions or any questions or comments, definitely feel free to do that. With that being said, I think that's kind of a wrap up for the very first episode. Hope you folks enjoyed it. And if you have any comments or questions, definitely just throw it out there. With that being said, it's time for me to sign off. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you're watching this. Just have a great one.